On the video, I thought it looked weird. Like when I had my Bible like this, I thought like I had a Twinkie roll. It had yellow on my lap, and I'm like, that kid looks fat. It's like, no, it's just my Bible. So
She's got a fat Bible.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, Becky, look at his
Did you
Bible.
see his Bible?
It is so big. So you should start with.
All right. Welcome to the Friend of Sinners. I'm your host, Andrew, and I got my friend over here,
Josh.
And we're going to continue on with our series, Can Christians? And for today's episode, we want to go over the question, can Christians cuss? Or swear, whatever word you kind of want to use to describe that. So ultimately, we're going to be hitting that discussion, and unfortunately, we don't have Jonathan here today.
Boo.
I know. It's 2 times he hasn't been here, but hopefully he'll be back, and we'll be able to just kind of start like our usual. Let's get started with the question. Josh, can Christians cuss?
Such a long pause. No. I'm gonna start just no.
Ooh. Okay.
And then we can talk about more why.
Yeah.
So I guess first of all, there's the straight up verse about, if I can find it. No foul language should come from your mouth, but only what is good for building up someone in need, so that it gives grace to those who hear, which is Ephesians 4:29.
Okay.
So straight up. So there's that. There's arguments for and against, which there's arguments for and against everything in the Bible, but
I know. It's weird. We just talked about alcohol, and it's like there's arguments kind of aiming a little bit both ways, but this is one of those other ones that's like, I guess there's more arguments for one side that it's no. So anyways, I agree. As far as, can we cuss? I don't know. I was kind of just looking over through this. This is a little bit harder for me because I do, like you guys know, like I don't have exactly a clean mouth, and I realize more and more like it's not proper, and I don't know. It's a little bit hard to describe because like as you read scripture, I think it kind of clearly talks about what you just said, not having anything foul come out of your mouth.
Well, but one of the arguments, I just had a conversation beforehand with a friend of mine who I love him. He's one of my closest friends, and he cusses just regularly. His side of it, he's saying, he quoted what we talked about in the last episode of the part where it's a heart issue, is what he was saying. So if there's people around that it causes them to stumble, and that's like a real thing where they really feel convicted about, I shouldn't cuss, then for them it would be a sin for them to cuss. But if you don't feel that conviction about cussing, then it's okay. And so that was his reasoning behind why it's okay.
Yeah.
So he's like, out of respect for people that don't cuss or new crowds or whatever, he's like, I don't. He's really comparing it to drinking. I don't think that those things are quite compatible. I don't think you can put those two things together and say that this is the same thing.
Yeah. And I feel pretty similar too, like that. I don't think there's any parts where the Bible promotes foul language. But this is one of those things that where like as I'm kind of reading, and it's just kind of like I was like, just researching a little bit from both sides. Like it's one of those harder questions because like the Bible sometimes uses strong languages, and it has like words that like Paul mentions a couple of times in the Greek writing, uses the word fool, and it's translated as moros, moros, something like that. And basically that's where we get our word moron from. Like that's where it originates from. And so like we have like those kinds of words. And I know that's not like the hard 4-letter words that we have that are usually swear words. And so like I'm kind of just looking at that, and like it's kind of like the Bible kind of uses some of the harder languages too, and it's saying not to use foul language, but like it's also using harder ones. But I guess it's not that extreme of a harder one. I don't know. So it's kind of a hard argument to kind of agree, I feel like.
So as someone who I think you're somewhere between a sailor and a saint. I had that in my head. I'm like, that'd be a pretty cool song title or something.
Yeah.
Transitioning
from sailor to saint.
Yeah. What do you have a reasoning, or is it what is your thought process of it?
Man, this is kind of a hard one because I feel like the stuff that I was holding on to and thinking about earlier, I'm like, am I just kind of making excuses? Like, one of the questions I was asking myself is like, I feel like earlier I really wasn't like letting God really say this is what it is. Mm-hmm. You know, I was just kind of saying like, you know, like again, like what you read, don't let any foul words come out of your mouth. And I think there's another part in Ephesians 5 where like, do not have any filthy talk or coarse jesting. Mm-hmm. The Bible just kind of says that pretty clearly. And I just kind of thought to myself, like, it's not that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. And so it was one of those things that kind of like convicts me. And I'm thinking, and more, I'm like, when you're asking me now, and I'm like, I'm kind of like wanting to lean more and more off of, you know, saying, you know, those kinds of words, but it's also kind of hard. Like it's a transition. You know, like I used to swear a lot, and I swear a whole lot less. Like I feel like each year, mm-hmm. and I do feel like I do get better each time. And so I kind of see it like I'm progressing, but I also don't think it's like the end. I don't think like you swearing is, you know, signs that like you're not saved or you're not a Christian. Like some people would argue. So. I feel like some people take it too hard and be like, how can you be a Christian if you swear?
It's a nasty, it's a habit.
Yeah.
And it's hard to break habits, especially mm-hmm. when you've grown up doing them for years and years and years of your life.
Exactly.
So I get it. Like there's a few reasons I don't cuss.
Mm-hmm.
The first and foremost is that my family didn't. Like my parents, I've never heard them cuss mm-hmm. unless it was like quoting something, and still it's like they call them the B word or something like that, or a witch. Yeah. And so that's the key. That's number one, mm-hmm. which I think is the main reason. Second, it was just more from a worldly perspective. Like you know the people that they can't like finish a sentence without dropping the F-bomb,
mm-hmm.
and straight up you sound dumb. Like you do not sound like an intelligent person when you can't use cuss words as fillers almost.
Yeah.
Like I know, like if you're using, I understand it more if you're using cuss words for their intended purpose. Mm-hmm. I guess like every cuss word has a meaning to it.
Yeah.
So I get that more. Like it's a filler word at this
mm-hmm.
point. You're so used to using it, and then it also loses its value.
Mm-hmm.
I guess because they have weight to the cuss words.
Yeah.
And there's definitely times that I'm like trying not to, which is a weird thing. Like, why is that like the natural instinct for mm-hmm. people? And for someone who doesn't normally cuss, why is it my natural instinct to want to do that?
Dude, this is wild because like I said, as I'm like just all these topics, like as I'm researching and learning, like there's just some cool things. Like there's apparently like parts of our brain where apparently like usually swear words have an emotion attached to it. Mm-hmm. And so people who typically forget language or have brain damage, they can forget, you know, words and sentences. They can forget how to speak properly, but they don't have a hard time swearing, you know, when they're angry. And it's one of those like weird like things that's like, how is it that like you can like you have a hard time, like right now I'm having a hard time talking, right? Like, but you have no issue swearing whenever you're angry. Like you have no issue like just saying every word that comes to mind.
Or when you're learning a new language and the first thing people teach you is cuss words.
Yeah, I know, right? We've all had those friends, especially like my Spanish friends. I'm like, hey, how do you say this word? Yeah. I learned all the Spanish cuss words before I learned the regular words. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting because like it has like a weird place in our brain. It literally does. Because there's often like a lot of curse words are attached to some sort of emotion, which is so interesting. Like one thing I kind of want to do, and like I'm just going to do just a little jump here, because I kind of like come from, I think we're both kind of going in the same direction. I'm going to kind of go back to where I was like maybe 6 months from now.
Okay.
Like
from now, like before?
Like we're 6 months before, where I'm kind of more like, go for it, swear, say whatever you want, just for the sake of the argument, because like I think this is kind of more interesting what maybe a lot more people might believe. Yeah. So like one of the things I would say is like, I feel like people who don't swear are so unrelatable, or they're so like holier than thou.
You think I'm unrelatable and holier than thou? That's a good thing. I'm glad,
right,
I'm glad we're getting
no, like that's what I'm saying. Like here, we're talking about right now. This is, you know, a friend.
This is therapy, right?
Therapy right now. Like, I mean, what do you think about that? Like, as someone like you don't typically swear. Do you feel like, you know, when someone's swearing, do you feel like they're out of place? Do you feel like that's someone you don't often want to be around?
No, there's a point to that.
Mhm.
I've only told, I believe, one guy to not cuss in front of me,
Mhm.
and that was a coworker. And the reason I told him was because he kept swearing a lot in
Yeah.
front of clients, and
Oh,
I was
okay.
his manager, and I'm like, dude, you need to tone that back.
Tone that down.
Otherwise, I don't think I've ever told someone to stop
Mm-hmm.
cussing around me. I have definitely had people who realize that I don't cuss, and they will, after a while of knowing me, I had a guy, I was playing video games with a friend, this other guy from
Mhm.
high school was playing too, and we were on a chat, and he cussed just on the chat, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, Josh. And I was like, why?
Yeah.
Thank you. But
Well, you guys have that effect on people.
it does though, and
Yeah.
you stand out. So that was one of the third reasons that I don't cuss, is because it makes you stand out from
Mhm.
the world, as we're called to do. Like, you are not of the world.
Mhm.
You should not act or look like the world.
Yeah.
And it's a simple thing. It is not an easy thing. It's
Yeah.
a simple thing to not cuss. Just because it's that simple. Just don't do it. Well,
Mhm.
okay. It doesn't make it easy, but you stand out when you don't, because it is such a normal, almost natural, from the way you're saying the brain works.
Yeah. But I think
thing to
people
do.
recognize that quickly. Like, I don't know, like, as someone like for me, when I was swearing more, I was like, being around people who don't swear was often more boring. But at the same time, like, I felt like I naturally wouldn't swear around them. Like, when you think about like being around your pastor or something like that, you naturally wouldn't swear around them, or
Why?
at least for myself, which is which is one of those interesting things. Like, when we're around certain people, we don't want to swear, which is kind of like,
Is it because you know that you shouldn't be swearing, and so you're around the people that you're feeling convicted about?
so that's one thing. Like, I'm not sure. Like, I don't know if it's maybe just like out of respect, or maybe if it's just like at some level it's some sort of like a little conviction, like a little like you shouldn't be doing it. So I'm not sure which one that is, but like I thought, like, that's one of those kind of interesting things. Like, when it comes to like, you do stand out,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's one thing I even like. I love Larry because he never swears, and he kind of like, talks with me about my language, and it's like, because he stands out. Like, he never, I've never heard that man swear,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, that's kind of wild. It's kind of hard not to, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the other things that comes to mind when like why I would be more leaning for why Christians or why people should swear is maybe like it allows more better ways of expressing. It's often like better to say like, hey, I'm angry, or just say I'm really effing angry. You know, like it's much more dramatic. It makes much more of like an emphasis. So like,
It does if you don't overuse it, I
Yeah.
guess. If you use curse words sparingly,
mm-hmm.
I guess it would hold more weight. Like, first, I would assume if I walked into a room and just smashed open the door and said I'm effing mad, you guys would probably be concerned about how
Like,
angry
what-
I am.
What did you do, Matt?
So there would be a concern. So they
Yeah.
do have a weight for
Yeah.
100%. But that's with anything. I could
Mhm.
you could also figure out how angry I am by my body language, and because I like to think that you'd think of me as an honest person. So
Mhm.
if I'm like fuming and I say I am pissed off, I don't need to use other words.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're going to tell
Yeah.
by my
You're-
use of words. So you can use those words. We said all those words have a meaning,
Mhm.
and there's other words that you can use in place of those words.
Mhm.
So why wouldn't you? So then
Yeah.
it goes to, Paul says, 1 Corinthians 10:31. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do everything for the glory of God. So can you assuredly say, yes, I can cuss to the glory of God?
So this is like right now. I would say this, like, this is actually interesting. One of just like I think earlier today, I was reading some comments, and one of them's like, instead of Christians asking, "Can I cuss?" the question should be something like, "Does this glorify God?"
That should be our question for every situation and scenario.
Right? And
should.
I feel like, dang, like that's such a good eye opener. Is this glorifying God? And
Right.
I I think pretty quickly, I think we all can say it doesn't. And this is where, like, again, like 6 months ago or a year ago, whatever you want to say, like, I would find some way that, like, my justification for something like that would be, but I'm not relatable if I don't cuss, especially with the sinners. Like, that's a pretty common thing I hear too, and even for myself, that's something I hold on to. Is like, I want to be relatable. I don't want to be like the guy who, like, you know, uses the holier than thou language and, you know, speaks that way. I don't know.
But it's how you talk to people. If you're talking holier than thou, and if you're like sneering every time someone's cussing around you, I could see that. But I feel like that's connected to body language. Like we were talking about, if I'm around someone who cusses a lot and they're swearing away, I'm going to be like, you don't sound very smart in what you're saying. But I'm not going to shame you or degrade you. Like, I'll be like, I might ask, if it goes on for a while, I'll be like, what are you trying to get across?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, there was a kid in, where I grew up in the town. He was a really young kid, and he cussed more than anyone else in elementary school that I ever met. And I can only imagine at the time that it was just because he thought that there was, that's just what people did. He was trying to fit in, that's just the way the world works. And it's cool to cuss. Like, if I can cuss, then that's pretty cool.
Then you're an adult now, right?
Right.
Especially when you're a kid, that's the mindset.
But
Sorry,
it didn't fly. No part of me, it didn't make me want to hang out with him more. It didn't make me think, oh man, that's one grown up kid right there.
But so, like, on the flip side, like, this is one of those things that recently happened to me. I remember this like a month or two ago when I was working. I had a customer who was a little bit older, and all of a sudden this guy just starts having this potty mouth, and he's just swearing every other sentence. And then I'm just thinking to myself, everything that Larry, my friend, was telling me is like, now I know why, like, cussing is so, like, bad. Like it just seems so, like, sad when a person who's, like, much older and supposed to be wiser is swearing. It seems like that should be, like, an immature thing, and, like, as you mature, you shouldn't be swearing.
You think so? I
think that's how I kind of, like, that's what came to my mind at that time was, like, man, like, it just makes this guy, like, who I thought was mature, like, just seem like he was 20 again, you know, or, like, a teenager. Yeah. Like that's how it felt, like, just the way he was talking, and I'm like, oh man, this is so cringe.
Yeah, there's an effect to it when you're around people that have that. So I want to kind of go back to the point of, because I don't know if we fully covered the comparing it's a heart thing. Like, if I don't have any qualms about cussing or my words, one of the things he says was, we were talking about the meaning of words, like the F word, like, that's just an all around bad word. Even like, its meaning, like, there's no way that you can be okay with that. Like, that's the one. You can't make that an okay one.
I'm trying to remember, like, as I was looking this up, I think it was like a German word, or it originates from German, and so I can't remember. It was like one of those languages where it's like a normal word, but just how we adopt it today, like, there's no good meaning for it. Sorry, okay. I'm just sidetracking, but, like,
well, I can't talk on that point.
Yeah. So anyways, like, when we're talking about, like, swear words, do you feel like the word, like, we shouldn't use the word, or is the intent what's wrong? Like,
so that's another thing. Like, if I'm not intending to harm someone, like, if I'm cussing someone out, like, okay, I see that. Like, don't cuss somebody out. Like, that's obviously wrong. But if I'm just, like, trying to emphasize a point, or it's just a word in my vocabulary, it's just what I say for that word instead, there's a meaning behind it. Like, those words have weight. They are used in a context, and then you could go to, well, who decided that those are bad words? Well, who said that they were bad words in the first place? It doesn't matter. They have a weight. They have that. That is what the stigma is. You could go to, maybe this is getting off track, but you could have that stigma about Tinder. Well, Tinder is known as the hookup dating app. Well, wasn't intended that way. Maybe it was really supposed to start out as, like, really good dates, making meaningful relationships. I don't care. It is not that platform anymore. It is what it is known for currently, and that is what it is. And I feel like that goes along the same way. Yeah. Maybe I'm off track, but I feel like it's the same.
No, I think that's partially, like, that's pretty spot on, because, like, certain words don't hold the weight that they used to anymore. And like again, as I'm like looking up this up, I'm like not necessarily always looking through it like the Bible. I'm like just looking up just the history of language and like how we develop and why we use certain words and how these words came to, why even bad words start to become taboo. Why are they considered bad? So like the reason why I asked about the whole intent thing is because like one of my earlier things was like, if again a year ago, I would say like you're okay with swearing as long as you're not swearing at someone.
Mm-hmm.
And I generally still hold like that's at least a lot better. Like rather than saying like calling someone some named word, you can just say, "Hey, can you pick up the dog? Sugar, honey, iced tea." It's just like that's not really bad. You're not really like swearing at anyone. You're just describing something.
Just using it as a word.
Just using it as a word. And so like I wouldn't look at that as necessarily as super bad, but we obviously would know like if you're cussing someone out, then that would be pretty ill or that would be wrong. I don't know. It's just one of those things I started to like look up or I started to kind of question is the intention what matters or is it the word itself?
Well, the scripture doesn't say no foul language if your intention is to be mean to someone. Mm-hmm. It says no foul language should come from your mouth. But only what is good for building up someone in need so that it gives grace to those who hear. Mm-hmm. There's no like parentheses of unless this. It's just this is what it says. Mm-hmm. I very well could be interpreting it wrong.
No, I generally like that. Again, like I was kind of studying like that same verse, and I'm just thinking, like it kind of puts it pretty straightforward, but it's kind of hard to like understand like why is this bad or at what line is it? Because it doesn't say like don't use curse words. Mm-hmm. It's just no foul language, and like is foul just meaning something harmful or bad for someone? And one of the things like that kind of helped me is getting over this is I think this was in Proverbs. Mm-hmm. Proverbs has a lot. One of the things I've noticed is like Proverbs has a lot of like words fool and like it's
the book of wisdom. Like the wisest man in the world, Solomon. Like,
but he calls everyone a fool. Like fool is like written probably like 40, 50 times. And
when
like,
you are the wisest man on the planet, you get to say that.
You get to call people fools. Then you get the privilege, right? Yeah. Then you get to have the F word pass. You can just say fool whenever. I don't know if that's how it works, but no, like, so this is like what I looked at, like when it comes to Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. I just think of like, with life and death, is it in the words we say, or is it what we mean by it? Because sometimes, like, I feel like people don't often always have to use bad, like bad improper language to be bad. They can say something that just kind of like is like, I don't know how to say it. Something that's like more indirect. Like one of the things I remember, like I was looking up. I think this was like on Reddit, and it was like, what are some of the ways you guys like have a low key way of like just talking trash about someone, and like your low key response. And one of them was like, I hope your day goes as well as you are. It's one of those things you say to someone like. It doesn't really. It means fine, but like if someone's treating you like trash, like they're trying to say like you hope their day goes crappy or goes like hell. And I don't know, like what do you find worse, like saying some bad word directly, or like is it? Would you just prefer if you just said something that's like not necessarily quote unquote bad, but like something that's just you mean in a bad way? I don't know if I kind of ramble on a little bit. I'm just gonna say,
don't do either.
Don't do either.
Like I don't think there's a if I'm only murdering one person, I'm not murdering 6. So it's technically not that bad because I didn't murder that many people. I didn't do it that bad. Mm-hmm. I just did this little bad thing. Yeah. So it's technically better. Yes, it is technically better. Swearing just in conversation, using the word that it's meant to use, is not that bad. And it is definitely better than cussing somebody out with an intent to harm them or degrade them. And just it's better than just degrading someone without even needing to use cuss words. Yeah. It's like the intent is definitely big, especially with we mentioned the heart behind it. Mm-hmm. If your heart is hating someone and you are trying to just smash into them with your words, it doesn't matter if you're cussing or not.
I think you're pretty spot on with that. Like, I feel like it's more of what the heart means, and one of the things that comes to my mind. Let me see if I can find it. I love this verse because Jesus says it, so
You can't not love it.
probably is pretty good. So Matthew 12, chapter 12, verse 33. I'm sorry.
We got there. We got it.
Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or else make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For a tree is known by its fruit. Brood of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. A good man out of the good treasures of his heart brings forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasures bring forth evil things. And so, I think you're spot on. That it's mostly just from the heart. That's what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we mean. If we really if we're really angry at someone, even though we may not say something really bad, we mean it in a bad way, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there's two things I want to point out with the heart thing, which there's the follow your heart is such a huge thing. It has been in Disney since I can remember. And every movie is follow your heart.
Always heard that ever since I was a kid.
Right, it is. And so doing things about, what's your heart behind that? What's the heart? Asking those questions, they are important questions, but whatever comes out of your heart is showing something that's ingrained in you. So I'm trying to explain this well. I had a talk with somebody once, and he was saying how there's people that, I think everybody's done it, where you're you say something, you let something slip, and you just say something totally out of context or whatever, and you're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to say that. That's not me. And from what you just read, that is 100% you. That is probably more you than what you normally act like.
Yeah.
Whatever is slipping, because what is in your heart comes out.
Came out. Yeah. Hey guys, so as we're wrapping up this episode, just a reminder, this is going to be a 2-part series, and so stick around for the next one.